Time 7:02. We have a quorum at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and call tonight's school committee meeting of September 21st to order. First order of business on the agenda is the minutes from our last meeting of September the 7th.
Motion to approve the minutes from our September 7th meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, no further discussion, so all in favor? Motion passes 3-0. Thank you. Next up is the chairperson's report. I have a few more things to say tonight than I ordinarily do, but lots of good things going on. I want to start by saying Lashana Tova to all of the members of our Jewish community who are celebrating the New Year today. And I also want to mention that on Tuesday evening, I had the pretty amazing opportunity at the BOS meeting to see one of our fourth graders, a young man by the name of Silas Marciani, receive an Unsung Hero Award. And for those of you who haven't heard about it, he played a significant role in possibly saving lives during a fire in his apartment building back at the beginning of June. When he was made aware of it, he used some of the skills that he learned in the SAFE curriculum here. That's the curriculum taught in conjunction between our schools and the Maynard Fire Department. And he actually went around and alerted other residents in the building to the fire. Everybody was able to safely evacuate. So it was quite a wonderful event on Tuesday night. We had Senator Jamie Eldridge there. We had Rep. Kate Hogan there. The Massachusetts Fire Marshal was there, the chief of the Maynard Fire Department. The Board of Selectmen also had some gifts for Silas, and it was just truly wonderful to see one of our students get honored. But more importantly, he got honored for doing something that he had learned in conjunction with his time here at the Fowler. So, or actually, it was while he was at Green Meadow. Now that he's a student at Fowler, but it was a really cool event to be a part of and observe, and we're extremely proud of him. Next up, a quick update for those of you who follow our agendas and our meeting minutes. You might be aware that several weeks ago, the school committee voted to send a letter to Town Administrator Kevin Sweet asking for the additional Chapter 70 funds that the state released at the end of the last fiscal cycle. At the meeting on Tuesday night, I was in attendance and I discussed with the members of the Board of Selectmen and Kevin Sweet about the fact that there were funds that were released, but that subsequent to us discovering that there were funds released, we also got our cherry sheet from the state that our charter school assessments had also gone up. So ultimately it wound up being a wash. We got more Chapter 70 funding from the state. However, we also got assessed more by the state for our charter school tuitions. Ultimately there was no real money to talk about. Some of you who follow the Beacon Villager may see that there was an article posted online that had a quick summary of the meeting from Tuesday night. I spoke with Mark, the person who reports for the Beacon Villager, and there was an error in the way that he wrote up the summary of our conversation. In the article on the Beacon Villager, he points out that there was no funding available because of an increase in our out-of-district tuitions. And I just wanted to clarify that that's not completely accurate. Out-of-district tuitions we usually refer to as special education funding. Charter school tuitions are something entirely different. So at this point, I've emailed the Beacon Villager. I've asked them to make that small correction in the article before it goes to print tomorrow. And finally, thank you to the teachers in the Green Meadow and the Fowler schools for excellent back-to-school and curriculum nights. I had the chance to go to Green Meadow this year and meet with my son's second grade teacher. Unfortunately, because of other obligations, I had to miss the Fowler evening, but my wife was in attendance. She was incredibly complimentary and came away very impressed. So I just wanted to say thank you to the teachers and staff that are in attendance for a really great start of the school year, and what ultimately was really good back-to-school nights. And for those of you who have high school students, this is a friendly reminder that next week is back-to-school night at the high school. So at this point, Dr. Girardi, I think that wraps up my superintendent's report, or my chairperson's report. It's time for your superintendent's report.
So I've been trying to have some kind of academic or program highlights because there are so many good things going on in the school. So I always like to share that with the community and the school committee. I'd like to start off, we have several tonight. Some of you may or may not know the genesis of our sister school relationship with Instituto de Enseñanza Secundaria Itaca from Sevilla, Spain. One of our kindergarten paraprofessionals had a daughter who was teaching in that school. And she said they were looking for a sister city school. So it was a great connection that one of our staff members made. And she connected Jennifer Adams and Jennifer Gaudette, who worked to make this sister school relationship happen. And they actually came over. We'll have several of our students going over between February 15th and February 25th. But last week they had about 16 students come here. I was able to visit several classrooms at Fowler where the students came and worked with our Spanish students in Spanish class, which was absolutely wonderful. I tweeted about it. If you get a chance, the Beacon Villager had a great article about the impact of this program on the students and the families in our community, and they were very positive. In fact, Jennifer Adams shared an email that I'll share with you with one of the host families. And the email that Jennifer Adams received from one of our host families here in Maynard was, "I have to tell you how wonderful this whole exchange has been. What lovely, polite kids we have on both sides, all caring and watching out for each other. And the parents and community being so generous. Families offering to host gatherings, kids organizing, just hanging out. And most of all, they look like they really enjoyed each other's company and thoroughly liked each other, like they have known each other forever." And she says, "Nice job, Jen and Mary. Thanks for this wonderful opportunity. Please pass this on to the Spanish teachers too." And that was an email that Jennifer Adams received from Paula Copley. So I wanted to share that with everybody as communication. The next academic program highlight is from our food service department. Our food service director, Chris Piercy, wanted me to send a quick update out, and he shared with me some really beautiful pictures of some vegetables, which I don't have for everybody, but and the pictures are from the garden behind Maynard High School. So far, they've had a beautiful harvest of plum and cherry tomatoes, zucchini, summer squash, eggplant, kale, Swiss chard, celery, green peppers, green beans, radishes, and red lettuce, spinach, and fresh herbs. They've begun to use some of these vegetables for the student lunches, and they will be planning to celebrate the success in the coming weeks with a garden-to-table day utilizing all of the vegetables. They're going to have a special chef come in and utilize all the vegetables. He wanted me to send out a special thank you to Excel and FASC and the Green Committee and everyone else who helped plant, donate, water, weed, and check on the school garden over the summer months. So this was really a community effort, and a wonderful thing that our food service company went out of their way to help facilitate. So it's kudos to everybody involved. I was also at both of the back-to-school nights. Both went really well. I got a lot of positive feedback from both of the back-to-school nights, and the back-to-school curriculum night appeared to be a success, and the school committee really had driven that you wanted us to really celebrate and showcase all of the excellent programs. And so we really did get a lot of positive feedback, and I'd like to amaze our amazing Green Meadow and Fowler staff and students. And at the Fowler, they actually had students doing presentations too.
Wow.
Which was really, it just meant so much for the parents to hear the students' perspective. I think that really had a really nice special touch. So I wanted to thank all of our staff in both schools for the wonderful work they do with our students. A quick note, I've been putting in the blog, but it's very important. The Maynard Public Schools will be holding an anti-bullying forum on Tuesday, October 3rd. This event will be held at right here in this room from 7 to 8:30 p.m. In the superintendent's notes, I'm going to put a pre-registration link in because we'd like to serve refreshments and we'd like to know how many people are going to be there. And the Maynard Public Schools Policy Subcommittee is really in the process of reviewing this current school committee policy number 18, which is bullying prevention and intervention, the bullying prevention and intervention plan, and the bullying prevention and intervention reporting form. So they're hopeful that through this public forum that we can get some great ideas as to how to improve the things that we are already doing in regards to anti-bullying prevention. So I just wanted to make sure we had that announcement and everybody's aware so we can get a lot of people to participate and brainstorm how to improve that.
Okay.
And that is my notes for today.
Questions about anything Dr. Girardi just shared? Okay. Moving on. Citizens' comments. Sure. Yeah, could you just introduce yourself because I don't know you?
Sure. So my name is Jillian Prendergast. I live in the town, and I am also on the town finance committee.
Sure.
I'm here as a citizen.
Okay.
I have a question about, you were talking about the funding, the Chapter 70 funding and the cherry sheets and how it was a wash. Is that separate from the funding that was allocated to the schools from the during the special town hall meeting?
Yes, those are two separate things.
Two separate things,
Yes.
okay. Are you still looking to get that appropriated back into the general fund because you found other money for that? Or is that something I misunderstood?
I think it's something you may have misunderstood.
Okay.
Working with the BOS in the springtime, we were able to work together to identify some money to address a shortfall in our special education funding, which you're correct on. However, the Chapter 70 funding that we originally submitted the letter to Kevin Sweet, our town administrator, in regards for, was part of the general funding that comes from the Commonwealth to close out the fiscal year. Did that fully answer your question?
I think so. Thank
Okay.
you.
Other citizens? Yeah.
Sort of along the same line, and I've been wondering...
Could you
how can
speak
I-
up a little on this front?
Yeah, the acoustics in here are so
Okay,
bad. I'm
I've been
sorry.
sort of along the same line, and I never really completely understood where this was left last year. Is it my understanding that the emergency funds, or whatever you guys termed it, that we ended up getting from whatever fund that came from, I don't know, the 265 or 75?
Free cash. It's from free cash.
Does that, are we paying that back next year? Like, are we in the hole 275 before we
Yes.
start next year? How is that working?
So, let me try.
Go ahead.
Actually, Michelle's probably the best.
Because I know that was part of like what we went to the board for with the Chapter 70 funds and all that. But I don't specifically know if we're in the hole or...
So we have an annual budget, and we were hoping to get a level service budget. In order to do so, we needed more funding. We identified problems as to why we needed more funding. The Board of Selectmen were generous in that they were able to find free cash to support this year's budget. The goal you're talking about is that free cash is a one-time revenue.
Right.
The town doesn't have additional revenue to back that up each year, so going into next year's budget, that one-time fix for this year helped us through this year. Next year, we will have the service that we provide this year, we'll have $275,000 less to pay for it.
Okay. So we don't owe them 275?
We don't owe, no.
Okay.
It was nice that they
We just
helped
have to
us
find
get
a way to
this.
make it up.
Yeah.
The level fund.
It was a wonderful thing to do by them at a very
Yeah,
difficult
okay.
time for us.
Somewhere along the line, I got the impression that we owed them 275, and I couldn't imagine that was the case.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, my name is Ann Alexopoulos. I was wondering, following up to Sarah's question, is there a plan to, so we're not in that predicament next year when we need this $275,000?
Yeah,
So, Dr. Girardi, I'll let you address it, and Michelle, please feel free to chime in.
or correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the plan that the school committee was looking at was if there was additional Chapter 70 funding, whether they could use that instead of the free cash to fill that obligation going forward.
Right, but there is
The
not,
additional
right?
revenue. But as it turned out, when they met, they realized that there isn't that additional cash. But that was the one plan to try and solve that problem. Moving forward, I know the Board of Selectmen and School Committee earnestly said they're going to work together to try and figure out how to solve the problem. That was just one plan, and it didn't work out. Does that sound
Michelle,
right?
is there anything you wanted to add on that?
That's exactly right. What we are hoping to do is if the Chapter 70 funding that came to us, that would actually be added to like our base budget where the 275 is a separate, from the free cash, is a separate one-time funding. By adding the Chapter 70 money to our bottom line, our actual appropriation, each year when we get our incremental raise, that would be included in it already. So that's where the difference between the two amounts or how they affect us basically in the upcoming years.
At Tuesday night's meeting, Kevin Sweet, however, did do a really admirable job of explaining that even though the Chapter 70 funds were negated by the increase in our charter school revenues, that funding that came from the state will be incorporated into the starting point of our budgeting process next year. Correct?
If we understood it correctly.
If we understood it correctly.
I will ask Mike.
Yes, so will the charter school system.
So it would still be a wash.
Yeah, no, but
Well, that's assuming, you don't know, charter school system next year could go down.
Could. So, I mean, every year that's the case though.
No, that's, the last 2 years have been usually good.
I know, but I'm saying every year every time that there's an increase to Chapter 70, that would be still the case come the next fiscal year. So it's not any
There was just some
different in the way
concern
that we're
about a
approaching
structural
it.
deficit, so.
And I don't think that this negates any sort of structural deficit that we currently have at this moment. We currently still have a $275,000 structural deficit for the
For
school.
special education costs, yeah. Okay. Excellent. Yeah.
I just have a question clarifying about the Chapter 70 money. Because, so does that mean that our payment to the charter school went up $275,000 last year?
I don't think it went up that much. I think, so the cherry sheet, they call it the cherry sheet, I don't know where they got that, but it's a sheet that shows, and maybe actually I could defer to our friend from town, but basically, some things go up, some things go down. And there was a bunch of things that went up and down. So it wasn't just one item. I think it's, when I looked at it, there were, the charter school tuitions went up a little bit. The veterans money went up a little bit, or went down, or, you know, so there's a lot of different, so when you balance it all out, the bottom line, it was about a 10,000 wash on the town side. It wasn't any additional money.
So,
And
so I guess my other question
we have the cherry sheet right here.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
So
it went
Mary's,
up 150,000
it went up.
from what was, what we thought it was at the annual town meeting. It was an additional 150,000 when the cherry sheet money came in. 2017, it was 403,000. For this year, it's 645. So it's 100.
On the expense side, and then there's revenue side. So like, I know like the veteran something or other went up by $5,000. But every line item goes up or down a little bit based on what our state gives you.
But the bottom line is the kids that are going to those charter schools, we are now being paid $608,000 for the charter school.
And can you say what population those kids are? Those are or are not our special ed kids that are going out?
those are general education
Those are
students.
general education students that have chosen charter over state and district?
Correct.
Okay.
They may or may not, they could be.
I mean, theoretically.
We don't know, but they're students, resident students whose families make a choice to go to another school.
Yeah, and there may be some special
There may
education
be some
students within that
special-
population.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you
But,
for clarifying.
but those aren't the kids that the district felt they couldn't service and sent somewhere else.
No, that would fall under special education funding,
Okay.
completely different revenue stream.
And that's out-of-district placements.
Okay.
So that's in our budget. You'll see, you know, we've seen out-of-district placements increase.
Right.
But that's out of our budget.
Yes.
In regards to the charter school, how many kids during those 2 years went? Meaning, how many people went to charter school in 2016 versus 2017 to make that increase?
So, to be perfectly honest, we track that information. I don't have it in front of me. Perhaps somebody else at the table does. But every October we do a census where we determine what the total enrollment is here in the Maynard Public Schools. And we also get a sense of how many students have opted to go to AMSA, for example.
So I figured you guys would know like the cost per pupil type thing at this point.
The cost per pupil is usually, it can't be more than what our per pupil cost is. So for example, we're around 14,000, a little over that in our per pupil cost. And so essentially that money is being given to another school, but it's not in excess of that, if that makes sense.
Other questions or comments? All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
I just wanted to commend the school committee for starting to talk about a Proposition 2.5 override, because that's something that I've been thinking that we need, considering the struggles that we've had in the budget that I've watched over the 5 years that my kids have been in the Maynard School District. I know that there are some very loud anti-tax voices at the town meetings, but I think there are also plenty of us who feel like we're very happy to pay to keep the quality of our schools high, because not only does that help us as parents, but that helps support the property values in town. So I really commend you for bringing it up, and I think that if we sell it well to the town, that it will be supported.
Thank you. Yes.
As a parent, I disagree with that. I've had 7 kids go through the schools, and I do love the Maynard schools, and I'd like to see them to continue to improve. But I feel like my husband and I are both teachers. I work in the Maynard system too. And we're gone all summer, and I feel like every summer I come back and I hear some more information that has me so disappointed. Last year at the school committee meeting, when we were talking about the budget and talking about all the things that we were going to have to cut, the one thing that really jumps out at me this year is that one of the changes that was being made was that we were going to a .5 vice principal at both Fowler and Green Meadow, which would save the town a lot of money, both benefits and salary. And yet that position, those 2 split positions were given to a current staff member at a higher cost, meaning that then we had the principal at Green Meadow, which meant that we had to hire a principal. So maybe I'm misunderstanding the finances here, but it doesn't seem to make sense to me. And then I feel like to ask us to pay more taxes to fund decisions like that, I just don't understand. If you could explain that to me.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr.
I'd like to clarify that for you. So when we were talking about the reduction in the current .5, at the time, in the .5 Green Meadow assistant principal, we were very careful, and over the summer we deliberated whether we were going to hire a .5 assistant principal in both buildings, whether we were going to look at a different model, but at the same expense. And so basically we had 3.5 positions that went down to 3 positions. And what we did was we shifted some of our staff based on their skill set so that we could make sure that the model was good, because we want to make sure we're providing the best service we can with the administration we have. But when we hired new staff, the difference in the salary, there was no difference in salary. So there was a savings of the .5, is what I'm saying. Even though it's called a principal.
Can you explain that to me more specifically? Because I don't understand. What I know is that at the school committee meeting in the spring when we talked about this, it was explained that we were going down to 2.5 positions. But one full-time person is now in that role. So I'm not sure what you mean by the 3.
I believe it was explained.
Can I explain it really quickly? So you had a principal at Fowler, a principal at Green Meadow, a full-time vice principal at Fowler, and a half-time principal at Green Meadow.
Right.
Now, if you remove the Green Meadow .5, you have that 1.0 that was still the assistant principal at Fowler split between 2 schools. So we still removed the .5 position, and now we have 3 technically principals, but one is .5 here and .5 there. So it's still.
So my question then is, what are the numbers? Do you have the numbers of salary for those 3.5 positions last year to now what the 3 full-time?
Yes, so technically we saved about $45,000 is what it came
there are
down.
numbers to back that up?
Yes,
But let me explain it, because I know where your concern is, and you're saying, but wait a minute, you put a more expensive person into that split position.
I had thought the .5 was for a reason that cuts cost with benefits for a lot of reasons.
It did though. It did, because if you have one person at, I don't know, we'll say $90,000, and another principal $90,000. And then you had a vice principal at $80,000 and an assistant vice principal at $40,000. So now you have your 2 principals, and then you had $120,000 to work with. Do you get what I'm saying?
I'm still not completely following it. At .5, you don't receive benefits, am I right? A .5 position does not receive benefits.
Depending on how many hours they work.
.5 is at half-time, so you don't receive benefits. The way it was explained in the spring was that we were going to 2.5 positions. So we would have had three full-time positions and 1 half-time.
In the benefits way, what you're talking about, yes, in the benefits, we didn't save, like, we stayed the same. But in the salary.
How did we, right, okay, so we didn't save.
For the town, on the benefits side,
So we
yes,
saved the
didn't
salary
save.
of a .5 person, but.
Yes, we saved the salary of a .5 person, which was our job to do. Our job was to maintain our budget and to cut our budget. And our budget, it doesn't include the benefits of the town.
Yeah.
Our budget includes those salaries, and that's what we did.
Well, and I don't recall us talking, we did talk about saving benefits on other positions,
Yeah.
On that position, you were just talking about eliminating a .5 position to save, whatever it was, $45,000. We did that. The concern you have is it looks like we hired an additional expensive person and replaced the vice principal with an expensive person. And what I have explained to some parents individually when they've come to visit with me was that we shifted the expensive person from one position to another, but the one we hired was at the same salary as the less expensive vice principal. So that's why the 3 administrators that had always been planned to be there are still at the same salaries that were planned. The .5 that was going to be reduced was reduced, and that $45,000 was realized. And I don't believe we talked about saving healthcare with that particular reduction.
We didn't, and I can address that because I was the one who took some flack for some of our conversations around that, that we weren't sure exactly what we were doing with that position because we were looking to make the model as successful as possible. What we had said is that the position would likely be split .5 and .5 between 2 buildings, to which we had a lot of parent and teacher outcry about how could you possibly be an assistant principal working .5 in either building. And one of the reason that we were we had been thinking about a different type of model, but at no point, most of the time, most people were thinking that it would be one person who would be splitting that position. So it wasn't a discussion about benefit savings in that capacity.
Yeah, it was explicitly said, that was the major concern, was how would a vice principal be in 2 different buildings at the same time? Would we do it every other day? So there was a lot of conversation about how that one person would split those 2.5 responsibilities. We just did a different model, so that we're hoping to be more efficient with administrative responsibilities through this different model. But I was asked by parents who visited me, is it a wash? Are you going to spend any more money on the new position you hire? And I said no. What the administrator that was in place last year was making will be what the new administrator makes, and that is a fact.
There was no salary increase or no pay raise?
There was, what the administrator that was in place was going to be making this year is what this person is making. That's the salary that was planned for.
So there
in the
was
budget.
no pay increase, no salary raise?
Some administrators, yes. The administrators got 2%.
Approximately.
Yeah.
And how much did the faculty receive?
How much what?
What was the faculty raise increase?
They're still in negotiation.
Okay.
And unfortunately, that's all we can say about that. Yes?
So I can assume that the faculty's probably looking at a 2% raise?
I cannot even begin to address that question because of the fact that we're still in open negotiations with our teachers association.
I was just assuming, just because usually you try to keep the management and the working staff the same.
Actually, some of our other bargaining units that had already agreed to contracts were actually making less than 2%.
But you felt it was good for you guys to make 2%?
So it was a decision for the administrative team that's been reduced.
Well, I'm asking the school committee. So you felt, even though other people took lesser raises, that it was worthwhile to give in this fiscal crisis that you're asking everyone to cut back?
Can I clarify one thing?
Well, I was still stating something.
No, I know, but I think this will help your question.
No, I think I'll continue, if you don't mind. So you felt that everyone else should take something lower than inflation, a modest raise, but the administration should stick to the 2%, even though you're cutting positions. You're pushing, what I can understand, the benefit costs to the town side, which still comes out of our pockets as citizens. Whether it's a level funded salary on your side, it's still the benefits, the health care, the pension costs, you name it, comes out of the town side, which as citizens we pay. But I'm just trying to wrap my head around, it took about 4 questions to get out that it was a 2% raise. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around, okay, you're so quick to give these raises out for the administration, but
We don't set the raise, we don't set the principal's salary. So as school committee members, we are Dr. Girardi's boss and Ms. Gaudette's boss. But
so
we
who
don't set.
approved the raise?
I did.
Okay.
Can I
That's all I was wondering, because you said it was them, and then they just said it was you.
Can I just clarify one quick thing, is that when we talk about a 2% raise that hits administration, we are not on a step system where every other union within this school district is. So when you talk about teachers getting a 2% raise or custodians getting a 1.75% raise or whatever you're talking about, that 1.75 is on top of them moving up a step. So it actually averages out to be more than the 2% because they move a step on their salary scale, plus they get the 2% COLA. Where administration, we're flat, and all we get is the percent COLA. So sometimes it works out where it might seem like they're getting less money in the long run. And for the people who are on the top salary scale, top of the salary step, then that is the case, they only get the COLA. But for the majority of people who are within their union, who they negotiate for their salary scale, they do move up a step every single year.
So, but like you said, the senior teachers are not getting a pay raise.
I'm not just saying senior teachers, I'm saying anyone who is on the top salary scale.
Yeah, so that could be an issue considering.
But they negotiate as an entire union, so it doesn't just include the people who are on the top step, it includes everybody else that is within that union and within that salary scale.
I mean, some of these things are public documents where you can see what the step scale is. And I forget how many steps we had in our last teacher contract. I want to say 12 at least, 12 steps. So there's the step increase plus the COLA. And when we averaged it out, I want to say last year we looked at it, it was about between 5 and 6% per year average. It depends on what column you're in and what step, but with the step increase and the COLA, that's around how much it was.
The top step for any of the faculty, though, doesn't even come close to the top, to administrator salary.
Well,
so the 2%
true.
Administrator raise is still going to...
That's not
true.
It's not actually accurate either because there's so few administrators, it's a much smaller number.
If it's hours per day.
No, even overall.
Yeah, I'd say even
So at this
even
point,
overall,
Michelle?
it's actually not as far off as you think, but I think you can actually look right into the town report yearly and it will give you all the salaries of the town.
And the highest paid teachers don't come close to the superintendent's pay. It never will. But I'm saying the 2% raise for that is gargantuan compared to any teacher increase.
But it's still not going to get us anywhere near, like if it's say 6,000 or 7,000, and you have just so few administrators comparatively, and we've been really trying to be very aware of this.
We're just, I think we're all wondering how to justify.
Participate, so I think I'm going to close this line of questioning.
I just had one thing to bring up.
Can I come back to other people in the room and then we'll return to you, please?
Yep.
Thank you. I believe you had your hand up?
My question was answered when she commented.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. So I absolutely love that we're talking about Resolution 2.5 and we started this conversation. I'm wondering whether there are other groups in town that are also starting this conversation. It doesn't make sense that it starts here because we're the biggest employer in town, so it really affects us. But last spring it was all about improving our communication with the board of selectmen and all the groups. I'm just wondering whether this conversation is going to spread to other parts of town. So really, we need to think about it not only from the perspective of the school, which as a teacher and a mother of a kid in public school I would care about, but there are other folks that have different perspectives, and I would like to hear from them as well. So I'm just wondering where we're going.
So you're actually preempting a statement that I was going to make at the start of that agenda item, but I'll go ahead and address it. The answer is yes. In the springtime, the school committee and the Board of Selectmen had a joint meeting. And at that joint meeting, we both expressed interest in getting together in both large group and smaller subcommittees to discuss budgeting and spending priorities. Also, this morning, I received an email from the new chair of the Finance Committee asking to get a couple of meetings amongst our three groups on the books. One in October, one in November, one in December. I was planning to RSVP to that when I go home tonight. So you are absolutely correct that we all have stated at this point a desire to get the different groups in town together into the same room to talk about things like budgeting and finances and spending priorities.
Will this meeting be open to the public? Like, I really want to hear from other people because I know how I feel about it, how most parents feel about it, but there are other folks in town, so I'm just wondering whether this is something that the town can come together and truly have a discussion about it.
So joint meetings will be posted, and I think speaking for myself, I will do my best to try and publicize when those meetings are occurring.
I appreciate it, because I have to look Facebook all.
Well, previously I've never really posted school committee type information on Facebook, but in my new role this year, I'm trying to use it as a platform to communicate a little more than I have in previous years. So I'm glad that it's working for you. Sure thing. Go ahead.
So Mary Murch and I are on the budget subcommittee, and we've been doing a lot of work of talking to all of the different constituents at the high school, middle school, elementary, special ed, business manager, and that, to get a feel for what's been going on the last couple of years with the cuts that we've been having to make. So this discussion is just the first step. The Board of Selectmen heard about it the other night, on Tuesday night, but it really is just the first step to just tell people that we're at a point where we're hitting the wall for whatever reason, different reasons. You can say salary, you can say whatever, the special ed mandates, but we're getting to that point. So this really is just a general discussion, and if we do decide to go forward, then obviously we do need the support of the selectmen and the finance committee. We're hoping that we can get everybody together. Possibly to be more than school related in that, but it really is, it's early, but we didn't want to wait until January, because if we wait until January, it's too late to be getting the education piece of it out. So we're grateful that everybody is here tonight, actually, to give us some of your thoughts.
Yeah. A very different topic.
Sure.
And it's a little more building based. I also came to the Fowler Back to School Night, and I was also very impressed by the kids and the presentation. I know they pulled that together in a very short amount of time, and as a parent, it was just really nice to see how excited the kids were about what they were learning, what they were doing, all the opportunities that are here. That my sixth grader is very excited about taking part in many of those things. I was also excited to hear more about advisory, which I believe is new this year, and it seems like something that may have been added because of Mary's trip to Finland, I'm guessing, because you talked about that a year or two ago.
I don't, but
just that connection to an adult, somebody who knows your kid really, really well. I know that my son's only has 10 kids in it, and he already knows and loves the person he's with, and so it's great to hear. The piece that I want to talk about also is that I think back to your presentation on your trip to Finland, and have heard podcasts and read countless articles about the benefits of kids having recess, and that is having a lot of negative impact on a lot of kids. Kids, all people, need breaks from learning. That's when you process things into your long-term memory. Getting up and walking from one classroom to the next is not enough time for a child to then process what they've learned. They need downtime in a busy day. They get home from school and they're doing homework. It's just, we're asking a lot of kids, and to deny them 20 minutes outside, to me, is not following best practices. Kids who want to read are going to read, and replacing recess with silent reading time, to me, is just not acceptable. So I hope that, I know that there are lots of discussion about this going around right now. I don't know the real reason for why it was taken out. I don't know if it's a staffing issue, I don't know if it's a contract issue, I don't know if people really feel like silent reading is better for kids. I'm a big advocate of reading. My kid loves to read, but he also needs to move, and he's not alone. So I really hope that Fowler will consider changing the way that they're doing things for the 6th and 7th graders, and even 8th grade. I remember in 8th grade, I went outside with my friends after lunch. We had 15 minutes to just socialize, which 8th graders need to do. So I don't think it should stop just because kids turn 10. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it related, or?
What?
Is it on the topic of recess?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So that was also brought up at the last school committee meeting. I think I was here, or the last one I was at. And I'm wondering, so what's next regarding Fowler recess, and whose court is it in, and is it going to get addressed, or are we just going to keep coming to school committee meetings and hearing about it?
So, let me clarify a few things first. And that is that until last year, we never had recess at 6th and 7th and 8th grade at Fowler. Last year, it was implemented as a pilot. The teachers wanted to try it out. They were interested in it because of all the discussion about recess. After holding recess for a year and piloting it, they decided to do different things, like the advisory. They decided to do the SSR because of the research around that and how it supports reading. And they found that also between 6th and 8th grade, the kids actually do move a lot more than they do in the traditional elementary programs where they're with one teacher all the time. Now they're moving from class to class. Also, the teachers build in brain breaks. I think Nancy taught me that one. And so there was some very thoughtful discussion between the last meeting and this meeting, between the school, the teams of teachers, and looking at it as it was a pilot last year, but this year they really want to try something different. And they are the professionals in the classroom. And while we do want to support recess, and we actually want to add recess, one of the good things is once No Child Left Behind hit and all the test score phobia, a lot of schools did away with 2 recesses at the elementary school. We still have 2 recesses. So we do try to put it in it wherever we can, and we would like to put in more. But for this year, after we piloted it last year, to me it makes sense to listen to the professionals. So scheduling is a management and operations issue, and I'm working with the union on, we've had conversations about it. But I really feel strongly that I have to listen to the professionals, especially where it was only a pilot for 1 year. I could see if we had been doing it and it was a tradition for years, then that might change the conversation. But there was a lot of thought that went into what the teachers are thinking they're trying to do to help students. They also find that silent sustained reading is actually a calming time for kids. It also has the benefits of the fact that the kids get to read at their own age and grade level, which we're trying to provide students more opportunities to accelerate their learning. So this is one area where they get to actually read at their own pace and at their own level, so they could be picking out very appropriate text for themselves. And it's also a time where our teachers are so skillful in knowing what kids need that some kids might need more than just advisory. That day during SSR, they might need to talk to a teacher about something that's really important. But it's such a difficult age, 6th to 8th grade. I don't know about you folks, but I was very insecure. The physiological and emotional changes that are happening at that time, there's a lot there. And the teachers are able to address it better under this current model, or that's what they feel after they piloted it. And I know we have the recess initiatives, but we also have our social emotional initiatives. So I really felt strongly when I heard the teachers' concerns and ideas and why they went in this direction, that I need to support the teacher's decision, because they see the kids, and sometimes it's different from class to class. Some classes are more mature, some are less mature. So this was a really difficult decision for all of us involved, including the teachers and the administration. But we've been looking at it since we talked about it at the last meeting. But a lot of thought went into it. So I want people to know it's not like it's an arbitrary decision. It's just something that a lot of people have had input into.
So it's something that's obviously very important to me personally, so I agree with that. But I think that while I completely respect the judgment of professionals, to me it's such an important point for them, both for their mental and physical and sociological development, that I think for kids, like my son, he loves to read too, so it's not an added benefit for him. It's actually really causing not damage, is that not the right word, but I think it's detrimental to students. So that's my plea, what I see, from my personal perspective. So, and I think that also I can't, because there are a lot of parents who also feel the same way. We're all struggling with how do we communicate this to all of you. This is something to care about.
Thank you.
I don't even know how often SSR happens. I mean, my daughter's 4 out of 9, but she does it. But it's, so I don't, how often does it happen? Is it once a week? 5 days a week. Yeah. So even a couple of days, or some kind of compromise, or once a week, you know, just to have them get that, it would let the kids know they've been heard also, and that, you know, that you guys do believe in them and what they need, and at the same time, you know, you're not giving up too much of that SSR time, because I absolutely understand that reading again right now is obviously very important, it's very, you know, very, so I don't want to give too much of that up, but I think there's a compromise somewhere.
And if I could, Dr. Girardi hasn't heard this yet, but Mary Mertz and I met with Fowler the other day, and I said, could we do maybe 2 days, 2 out of the 5 or something that the kids can go out? So he hasn't heard this yet. We haven't approached him with it, but it's definitely still going to be a topic, so thank you. And they both seen the teacher and actually the reading coach were both on board with it. They thought that was a good thing, so. Just see.
We'll go over here and then we'll come back.
2 things. You said that it's leave it to the professionals. I, as a teacher, totally appreciate that. However, when I was at back to school night, what I heard the teachers say was, we really want the kids to have recess, so I'm a little confused about who's making the decision. And the second question is, I'm also wondering why we built a playground at Fowler. I guess that's just for the 4th and 5th graders? I forgot.
At the time it was. At the time when we built it, 6th and 7th and 8th didn't have recess, but we did say.
I mean, I don't know how much 6th, 7th, and 8th graders use the playground, although at FAST they do. They're all over it at FAST, so I'm guessing they would be if they had recess. And I have a few studies here from the American Pediatrics Academy. I mean, it's all over the place that this is what kids need, and there's no age attached to this. This is what people need. So I don't understand why we're taking it away from our most vulnerable age group who need the practice of social skills more than anybody. And they're going to fail at it. Sometimes they're going to be out there and it's not going to go well.
If I can jump in.
They're never going to learn it if they don't try.
Because I was involved in those, and this is part of the programming piece, and we are involved in the social and emotional issues and programs and such. I do want to echo Dr. Girardi's words about the thoughtfulness with which the teams, and I'd be interested in which teachers you were speaking, not to pit sides against sides, but just because what I was hearing was much different from that. And so, you know, we will take it back. We will continue to have the conversations, but I do want to echo Dr. Girardi's words about the thoughtfulness that this was done. This wasn't sort of just, oh, I don't want to do it, so let's make them sit there and read. There was a great deal of thought put into it in terms of it being a programming decision and so on. So we will take this back. We will continue to work with our teacher leaders who have the best interests of your students at heart. I know when I spoke with several of the teachers about this issue and making a decision about what we would do moving forward, they mentioned, as Dr. Girardi alluded to, the numerous ways in which they provide students with what they need, you know, during MCAS time or stressful times. And I understand, I know the research very well in terms of the studies that you're showing, you know, so we'll continue the conversation. I just want you all to know that this was not a matter of we're taking it away from kids because we want to or because we think we're, you know, that we need to. It was something that was done in a thoughtful way, which you may disagree with, and that's perfectly appropriate, but it was done thoughtfully. So we'll take it back, we'll continue to have the conversations, and we'll report back.
I appreciate both of your explanations and gaining some understanding of, you know, last year was a trial, this year we're going forward. What I don't understand is this year a trial, or is this the projection going forward with the plan to continue the conversation moving forward?
I think that we re-examine our programming every year.
Okay.
In fact, that's part of our budgeting process. If we have a program that's not working, we don't fund it. So we examine everything we do every year, and so, you know, to me, everything's open to discussion. That's what we do. In Maynard, we dialogue about everything because we are a community, and that's a good thing. So, you know, we've heard the input we've got tonight. You heard Jennifer say we'll talk to teacher leaders again, but we did talk to the teacher leaders and specifically the whole teams of teachers when the change was made, and it wasn't willy-nilly.
So I do have to jump in, and this is not going to be a surprise to Jen or Bob, or pretty much anyone here. I really feel like it's a hard job with the teachers trying to meet all the needs of the kids and really find ways to do that. And I have no doubt that it was a mindful discussion, no doubt, because I really feel like that everything that I've come across that we're doing curriculum, everything that we're trying to do for the kids, it's been very mindful. And at the same time, there's a reason why this is a conversation on the national stage as we push, as academics get more intensely pushed at kids. And we're at this point as a culture as well of levels of obesity and a pandemic of sitting, where we need to look at this differently. I think it's thinking outside the system and really taking a hard look at that and recognizing that this is social emotional. It is not separate from, and how do we make that work? And so I'm going to challenge everyone to consider that and try to make that work and listen to the people here, we as the community members that are saying, we understand you have the complete and utter needs of the kids in mind, and yet we're telling you there's a disconnect. And we ask you to consider that moving forward.
I just have a quick clarifying question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is the SSR program in place of what was last year's recess? So, like, instead of like when they were playing, now are they coming in and doing the silent reading?
Yes.
So now, thinking about like a 12 or 13-year-old, my husband's a middle school teacher in another district. In their district, they've had advisory for a really long time. And I'm just wondering, is a 12-year-old now going back, sitting where they used to do, or the time they used to do recess, and think to themselves, now I'm being punished and I have to read. And I'm not trying to like push that, I'm just trying to like get you to think a little differently. Because now, are they thinking for like the next couple of weeks, they have to read, and now are they going to have a negative connotation with this silent reading program because it's taking away their recess? Or what they thought was their recess. Did they know it was a pilot program?
Yeah, I'm not certain, but I don't think it's a one-to-one correlation. So I think there's more SSR than there was recess anyway. I could be wrong about that. So it's just a programmatic change that the students are being told, this is really important, and we're doing it. But I'm sure some students are probably feeling like, yeah, but where did recess go? I don't know if it's a one-to-one correlation, though. We'd have to look at it a little closer.
Just a follow-up question, because my son is in fifth grade, so I have no idea what he is talking about. So, SSR, can you explain a little bit of what it is and how kids with disabilities are being accommodated in order to how long does it take?
Why don't we do this in terms of recess? I know, Justin, there were some other things on the schedule, and I don't mean to cut off the discussion, but I don't want people, we didn't have preparation, materials prepared for this, so why don't we have a presentation at the next school committee meeting about the teacher's perspective on sustained silent reading on recess, and we'll get more in depth into the programmatic pieces, because I just don't want people to feel the pressure to provide information on the spot, if you will, and provide incorrect information. So if it's all right, I would appreciate if we could have a formal presentation where we have all the people in the room that we need to have in the room to provide the accurate information.
The one thing I would ask from last committee meeting, we did ask that if this is the change from last year to this year, that's communicated to parents, because I think there was still confusion around what was going to be happening this year and what happened. And so to be able to at least say, this is the current situation for this year.
Sure.
That would be helpful for the community. Thanks.
So Colleen, if you would please, make sure it's on the draft for the next agenda, please. Thank you. So wrapping up recess, I did tell you I would come back to you again, is there?
Yep. So what I was going to say, the last thing I was going to say is, I know you guys stated that you don't deal with the salaries, that's fine, you just do the superintendents. I think you should be a little bit more mindful of the optics, whether if you are asking for more from everyone, asking to do more for less, pretty much, of what that means. I'm not begrudging a 2% salary. Heck, there was just a report out that says that the average salary is going up 3 to 5% this year for the working. So I'm not begrudging that.
Sure.
But I'm just saying, for optics-wise, if you're going to be doing that for administration, the chiefs should be feeling the same pain as the Indians. So that's all I was pointing out.
So can I just add a little background to that?
Thank you. I agree. I appreciate the perspective on it. Go ahead, Bob.
Actually, the decision wasn't made in a vacuum. So the town administrator gives us an advisory every year. I forgot to add this because there's so much to it. It's a very complex issue, all the stuff. The town administrator's advisory this year was that all non-union staff get a 2% raise and all contractual obligations be observed.
Yes.
And so that's why that was the standard that was given to us, was that the administrators are part of the actually there's some other staff too, by the way, like lunch ladies and other staff members non-union members who got the 2% raise as well, but it was based on the town administrator's advisory to all of his departments. So I'm one of his department heads. He gives us an advisory. This is how we expect you to manage the budget. He also said, be careful. We don't know what the revenue is going to be. He gives you a lot of other things to worry about too. But that was in the town administrator's advisory. I just wanted to share that.
And we're making some blanket generalizations during this conversation, and I want to be really careful to protect confidential information. But the idea that every administrator in our district got a 2% raise last year is not completely accurate. There were some that did not get a 2% raise based on evaluative steps.
Stand by the statement about the optics part, though.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate all of the input. Citizen comments is often a wonderful time to touch on hot button topics that we're not necessarily aware of or that we may not have anticipated needing to talk about so soon. So I do appreciate all of the constructive and critical feedback. Thank you. So at this point, we're going to kick to agenda item number 5, which is the playground update and the opening plan.
So I've asked Aaron McCloskey, our DPW director and facilities director, he wears multiple hats, to come and just give us an update on the playground completion and the topic that was discussed at the last meeting. There was a lot of questions about grass use and what's the best thing for the grass, to let it sit the rest of this season, how long should we keep off it? And then Aaron, real quick, for Mary Beth, who wasn't able to attend tonight, I'm just going to explain what she has worked with the staff as far as the implementation of the use of the playground. She and the staff have looked at a guided discovery method of the kids learning about the playground and starting to be able to use it, because we do have space confinement issues, right? So we can only let so many kids on the actual structure because we're keeping the grass till it gets to the point where we can use it. So once the opening day is confirmed, and Aaron's going to do that for us tonight, but Mary Beth said it was wonderful. He let her go on it, and then the rubberized surface is absolutely wonderful. She's so excited about it. But she said once opening day is confirmed, the teachers will bring their classes to play on the structure. Once all the K through classes have had a turn to play on the structure, they're going to start doing it during the lunch recess and the early or late recess, because we do have the 2 recesses. Initially, they'll work out a rotation schedule, so some classes will use the structure and others will use the pavement, because that's what we've been using in the meantime. And then eventually what they'd like to do is, once the newness is worn off a little bit, is to give students choice, because there will be some choices, kids who would naturally want to be on the blacktop because there's fun things to do there too.
Sure.
So that's kind of the method of how they're going to open it up slowly. But she's very excited, we're all very excited, and so I'll let Aaron talk about what we need to do, though, to make sure that this structure lasts and that the grounds around it last for a long time.
Evening, Aaron.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for having me tonight.
Thanks for coming out.
Yep. Dr. Girardi, school committee. So I met with the principal yesterday. We walked through the playground, met with the contractors yesterday as well, got an update. I know we had a delay due to some weather and also some contractor scheduling issues with laying down that bonded rubber mulch surfacing. So I apologize for the delay, but I appreciate everybody's patience. So we're on schedule to open it up next week. Contractors still have some equipment there right now. They plan on trying to get that all out of here by the end of this week.
If you don't get it out, the students will like that too.
Yeah, so, but we're probably going to do a final walkthrough with the contractor Monday morning, and just a safety walkthrough, and also just to check against engineering specifications, make sure everything was done, and close it out and open it up for use Tuesday morning. So that's the schedule as of right now. I discussed that with Mary Beth yesterday. She's aware. And obviously I'll provide an email update to everybody once that walkthrough is done and completed and successful. As of right now, all the equipment's in, so in addition to, and I think I might have mentioned a couple weeks ago when I was at the last school committee meeting, but in addition to the spec plan, we moved forward with installing 3 new apparatuses or pieces of equipment on the playground. We had to remove a couple of old pieces that we have, and we plan on reusing it at some other park in town. We don't know where yet, probably either Coolidge or Rio, but we're going to hold on to that equipment. So we installed a multi-user swing, a Spinami, which is like a new type of carousel, and then a Unity Dome, which is the old Jungle Gym. It's a new name for the Jungle Gym. So you'll see those out there. We had to reconfigure slightly the design to fit the new equipment, and keep a couple of old pieces of equipment that the original plan wanted to remove. So we wanted to keep as much as we could. So we did that, and it all fits, and it all looks great, and it's installed. As far as the grass goes, we want to try to preserve that grass and give it as much time to get established as possible. So talking with Dr. Girardi and school administration, we're going to try to work out that the grass to the left side or the east side of the playground stays fenced off and is not in use all fall and all spring. I know it's a big inconvenience, but we're spending a lot of money on that, and we want to make sure that we give it the best opportunity to get established for long-term use. So we're going to install, there's already snow fencing up there, part of the walkthrough next week on Mondays, to make sure that it's all secure and safe. There are going to be steel posts out there and some snow fencing. It's going to be the opposite side of the walkway. There's a buffer between the walkway and the playground to try to give as much space, for kids running around and keeping away from those posts. The grass strip that's going to be on the right-hand side, or the west side closest to the hill, the embankment to the school, that's going to not be fenced off. It's a small strip, but I don't feel it's safe to put fencing that close to the play structures on that side. So we're just going to leave it open and see what happens. If we have to do some slice seeding or maintenance in the spring, we'll do it. But so that'll be open. There's some benches over there that'll be open for use for everybody, and that's all been explained to administration. It's going to be a tight space. You're going to have a walkway to get down to the playground, and then it's going to be kind of confined. The question came up about limiting use or occupancy. There's no occupancy restriction. That's going to be an operational decision with administration. You use their judgment. Like Dr. Girardi said, they're going to try different classes and see how many kids they can fit and what the appropriate supervision level is going to be, so it's a safe environment. But I think we can work it out. And then we're going to be working on installing some more fence or chain, at least in the drop-off circle area, per the principal's request, to try to create that barrier to keep kids corralled in that area and keep them out of traffic. We also have some new signage that's coming to keep parents or with younger children who might not be in the school system off the playground during school hours, and remind parents to kind of stay out of that area. So we have a little bit of budget left over. Once all the dust settles, we're going to try to see what else we can get. It's most likely going to be used for fencing to try to keep a permanent barrier between the traffic, the parking lot, and the playground. But I'll know more in the next couple of weeks once I get the final bills in. But we're on budget with the different funding sources that we received, and I hope everybody's happy with it, and I think it's a pretty successful project thus far, and hope everybody gets some good use. We plan on a ribbon cutting ceremony on it's October 3rd, I believe.
That's our tentative date right now. We're looking at October 3rd. We're going to do it in the late afternoon so that we can celebrate with the community, to thank the CPC for the funding and the town for the funding for this. Obviously, it's on school property, but I think it's an amazing piece for the community to use as well. So tentatively, we're scheduled for the 3rd. We're going to talk about logistics and all of that, and we'll get that information out.
And I'd also like to thank Leslie Knight, who's here tonight with us. She was a driving force and the motivation and for all of us to make sure that this came to reality, and she's an amazing community member, so I just wanted to thank her, because today wouldn't be possible, or next Tuesday wouldn't be possible without you. So thank you, because it's an amazing structure, and it really does, again, it embodies Maynard. Maynard is an inclusive community. Now we have an inclusive playground that all kids can use. So that is an amazing feat, and thank you, Leslie, for all your efforts.
Just while
Questions?
we've got,
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
while we've got Aaron here, totally off topic, but having to do, what else is new, but having to do with Green Meadow. I've heard from numerous people about that piece that used to be the state skateboard park. It's like that dead zone.
Yes.
Is just not being used for anything. Just, I don't even know where to begin. I know we've talked about adding, parking and stuff like that, but if we could just kind of figure out something to do with that other than have it all fenced off and just...
Yeah, it was fenced off. The fence was starting to deteriorate, so we cut it down. We have some, we have some plans. There's still some posts in the ground. Once the rest of the work kind of construction slows down, we're going to try to pull those fence posts and the footings out in the corners, other than, going in there and tearing up that entire pad and putting more material down.
I know low on the priority list, but it's just, it's a shame to not have it be used for something.
I agree. Yeah, it's an open space. I mean, it could be utilized. We just, if there's any recommendations from the school committee or,
Be a good thing, but
I don't know. Maybe we could put some thought into it and kind of come up with some ideas.
Thanks. Bethlyn, did you have?
Just on the playground again, I see community members, the Lowe's grant, did you hear about that?
I haven't heard any feedback from that.
Okay, I forget when we were supposed to hear about that.
It's supposed to be August.
Oh, boy. Late on that.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. So nothing's come across emails or phone calls.
Any other members, comments?
I do just want to say thanks to Aaron as well.
Absolutely.
For his part in the town, running us, the partnership in making this happen.
Absolutely.
And it's really great to have it's a whole town effort to make this be what it is. And we're very grateful.
Aaron, I just have a question. The blocks
Yep.
that are coming down the hill,
Yep.
are those going to be permanently fenced off?
Not right now.
When the children play?
Yeah, hopefully we can keep, we installed the trap rock up there to keep the hill from kind of deteriorating and running down. I think, so the envision of this project, right, is a phased approach. Phase 1 was to leave the embankment. The trap rock was actually a change order that I did in addition to keep it because it was just going to continue to erode. I think future phases had a timber wall placed in there. That's why there's no other work that was done to it. So, if it becomes a safety issue, if you want to keep kids off, we do have some money for some fencing for those kind of barriers. So, that could be an option that I put up, a short section of 4-foot high fence right in front of it to keep kids from crawling up it.
So, Ann, I think if you and the other Green Meadow teachers could provide us with some feedback on that at some point, just to inform us, because unfortunately I'm just never around the building at recess times, so thank you. Was there, what's that? Thank you. I think there was another question. Yeah, hi, Nancy.
I wasn't sure if, Mary, you were talking about this or not, but were you talking about that way to skateboard?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was wondering, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, there were a couple of proposals to revamp the parking situation over at Hill Park. I was wondering if that might be looked at or revisited or anything like that, if you're going to look at that particular little patch.
So I do have those proposals, and I think at the time, the school committee, I think it was a decision that were the other priorities, right? And that kind of just took a standstill. But we have those. They're still good proposals. And if the powers that be wish to move forward with one of those or start the discussion again, we can definitely do that. So
It sounds like a pretty good future agenda item.
It seems like there's more and more people who are choosing to, take their children back to going to school. And I don't know if it's just me, but I happen to see it's getting more of a hindrance over at Hill Park, back and forth, families waiting for parking spaces, children waiting to be picked up to school. But it's just something else.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Aaron.
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
So have a good night. Thanks.
Yeah, you as well. All right. Moving on. Agenda item number 6, the Prop 2.5 override discussion, which I'm going to go out on a limb and say a lot of you are here for. So before we launch into it, I want to be very clear as to the intent and the scope of the agenda item that we're about to launch into. This conversation is an agenda item tonight because of multiple requests from citizens that have come to our meetings over the last several months and even the last several years to ask us as one of the boards in town about a Prop 2.5 override in response to a lot of the budgetary struggles that we've experienced. Well, to be honest, every year since I joined the board, and this is my 5th year. So I want to limit the scope a little bit in that respect. We're responding to citizen suggestions and just bringing it up constantly. And we also have to be aware that this conversation is just one piece of a very, very large and complex puzzle. We have members of the other boards in the room with us tonight. If we as a community ultimately decide that this is the path, we need the involvement of our committee, the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, the mobilization of the citizenship. So this is just a small piece of a very large puzzle. Amongst our board members, just informally polling, there's mixed opinion as to whether it's necessary or it's practical. We're only beginning to scratch the surface of understanding of any obstacles or possibilities that we might face. And I also want to just touch on again what you stole my thunder on a little while ago. We're in the process of getting all of the members of our boards in town together to talk about funding and to talk about budgeting and to talk about spending priorities. Because it's not just a school committee conversation at this point, it's a select board conversation, it's a finance committee conversation. So this, as I'm envisioning what this is going to look like over the next few minutes, just starting the conversation, like priorities. I'm going to kick it to Mary and Mary here in a moment, because they have been meeting with the building level administrators. They've been meeting with the staff, with the support staff, everyone who's been affected over the last few budget cycles to really get an accurate snapshot of what the realities are in our buildings right now. So I'd like to start up here, and then at some point I would like to take a few comments or clarifying questions. But at this point I would like to kick it to Mary and Mary and just see where you'd like to start the conversation tonight.
Sure. So as I mentioned a little while ago, Mary M and Mary B, we've been going to all the different levels in that and really hearing feet on the ground what the cuts have meant. There's serious situations with scheduling, with specials, with being able to, kids being able to take different things versus not, based on the schedules and who was available and that. And the repercussions of less staff and that less resources. So we've gotten a really good feel for how it's really been affecting the schools, not in a great way. So I know that, we do have a high tax rate. I hear it all the time at work and that, but I always go back to Dr. Masterson when he was the superintendent of schools. He used to say, every 10 years you need to do a catch-up because the state isn't funding the way that they need to in order to keep us getting level service. Level service every year means more money in order just to keep the things that we had the years before. So we haven't had that for a few years, so every year that means that we have to make cuts. And I think the high school principal put it best. He said, the first year, it's like looking at a quilt, and the first year you make a couple of cuts, and it's just a couple of strings from the quilt. He said, but you do that often enough, which is where we are getting to, and the quilt falls apart, because you can only do so much of it, and then it really starts having a negative impact. So that's sort of what, where we are right now, and that, but I'll pass it off to Mary Ann.
So this is my third year on budget subcommittee, and the first year, we cut some staff from the schools. Last year, we really tried to look at administration and not cut any classroom teachers, and so we approached it from that direction. And it's been really informative to meet with teachers in the schools, and there's the hard part of things. There's also a lot of innovative stuff that's going on in the schools. But what we heard, in talking about things at Green Meadow is, we've had to shift teachers from one grade to another each year, depending on the size of the class. And how nice would it be to be able to know that we had 6 sections for each grade level and to try to control for smaller class sizes and things like that. Something that we also heard from parents a couple years ago when we cut some classroom teachers. We heard, we'd love to go back to having full-time specials at Green Meadow instead of 0.8 positions. We've heard from people, you can maintain, and I know as a teacher, you can attract good people and keep them when you have a full-time art position as opposed to a 0.8 position. at Fowler, there have been some challenges too with specials. This year, I think, is especially interesting because the 8th grades come back, so that has posed just a new set of challenges to be met. And with everybody that we met with, we asked, do you see any room for efficiencies or for cutting? What do you see? And of course, hard to find them, but I think, people were honestly thinking about that question and coming back and saying, listen, we've found efficiencies here, and they would sort of say, here's where we've saved, but there's not a lot of room left to squeeze more out. So we are happy to be having this conversation. We were at the Board of Selectmen meeting Tuesday night and are excited that David Gavin and Cheryl Steele are going to be on the budget subcommittee, and we're going to be having public meetings with the two of them and talking about just finances across the town. But I guess this is a time I can pass it back to Justin first, but we're curious what's on people's minds here, just what concerns people might have. And again, it's just the beginning. We're not saying this is even something that we're going to need, but we wanted to start the conversation early so we aren't waiting until January.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, both of you, for the quick update, and more importantly, for your proactiveness in getting out ahead of this. I know that several years ago, when I joined the board, we were frequently, and I think somewhat accurately, criticized for starting our budgeting conversations later in our year. And oftentimes that put us in a sticky spot. And I can tell everyone in this room that every year we have made a conscious decision to start the conversation sooner, engage more of the population, engage more of the stakeholders, and just try to get voices heard. So again, this is another step in the process. We're trying it even earlier this year because, to summarize, 1 year we lost classroom teachers, another year we lost specialists, 1 year we lost a school counselor, another year we lost administrators, we've lost custodians. This last year we had to let go of secretaries. And I don't want to paint a negative picture, but I want to more just illustrate the sort of the levels that we've had to go to keep putting what I consider a really high quality product in our buildings. Before we start talking about some of the things that we could be doing better or we want to be seen done differently, I do want to compliment the administrators. I want to compliment the teachers. I want to compliment the staff. Every year they rise to the challenge and they keep doing really good stuff in face of really, really crappy circumstances. So that being said, I'm still optimistic. I'm still here. I keep showing up. I haven't filed my resignation papers yet. So let's open it up to the floor. Questions or comments or concerns, please. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a naive question. All of the surrounding communities are in co-town schools. Why is a co-town school something we're not talking about rather than a 2.5%? I feel like we're the only town in the area that is kind of by itself in our own district.
That's a historical question, and I think
I'll let Mary lived through it.
That's an excellent question, so thank you.
And Ken's here too. There's a few of us that could talk to this one. Last time I was on school committee was when we spent an awful, really, more gray hairs, but we had, so I cannot even begin to tell you how many conversations we had with the surrounding towns to try and regionalize. One of the closest that we came was to Neshoba, because at the time Lancaster was talking about receding from their regionalization. And it seemed to make the most sense because our kids do sports with Stowe and that. We came really close, but then Lancaster decided that they were going to stay put. We went to Concord, Carlisle, Acton, Boxborough, all the contiguous towns, and then we even went to the MSBA because that was one of the criteria that they used is, you've got a small school system here, in fact, that was one of the reasons that we had the 8th grade go up to the high school, because at the beginning they said 400 kids isn't enough to build a new high school. So we spent an inordinate amount of time really trying to get the MSBA to coax, the surrounding towns and that, for us to sell ourselves and how great our kids were and all of that, and it didn't come to fruition. So we would have liked that, but it didn't happen. So, and it's okay, because it turned out, we've got an amazing program here, but there would have been other opportunities. So.
Others?
what is it, are you asking for a particular amount, or are you asking for over, or?
So, yeah. So I'm gonna admit my naivete a little bit on this one. When we started thinking about the idea of responding to citizen input and asking for an honest and open conversation about this process, we have reached out in several different ways. We've come across several documents that are available online through the Commonwealth. There's a wonderful one from the Division of Local Services. It's a primer, so it's a lot easier reading than the other 16 or 17-page document. But it really starts to get into the nitty-gritty of what the mechanics of it are. It's heavy on vocabulary, things like levy limits and debt exclusions and really the whole mechanics of it. And at that point in this process, I'm just not there enough to tell you what the mechanics in the process are. But what I do want to repeat is that it's not something that we are going to try to do alone. If and only if, in the context of the larger conversations that are going to be occurring over the next several months in this town, it's determined as the best course of action, then we'll be a part of the process. But we have to mobilize BOS, we have to mobilize Finance Committee. Ultimately, and I may misspeak, but I believe it has to go to town meeting, and then it has to pass a popular vote. I mean, this is just, it's a very, very, very complex process, to the point where, like I said, there's nearly 30 pages of documents that I had sent to me about a day ago, and I just haven't had time to digest them yet.
Well, and I guess the question is, because, and I agree about that, 100% understand. It's my understanding, and it's a limited understanding of an override, is that when you go for an override, you're going for you're going for a particular amount to fund something, and then from there, your taxes are going to go up 2.5% from there on until there's another override. So I was just curious what the school committee is thinking at this point as far as open conversation.
So, So we haven't even started to have those fundamental conversations on what we would do if the process were to go forward. I think it's more so in response to the idea of what tools do we have available at our disposal to start to reverse this cycle that we've been in for the last few years. Because we have amazing administrators, we have amazing teachers, and we have amazing students who want to innovate, and we want to grow things, and we want to be on the sort of the leading edge of education. You know, we have an assistant superintendent in Jen Gaudet down there who's constantly sharing articles with us of all of the things that she would love to do. But unfortunately, the reality isn't so much what we would love to do, it's been what we've been forced to do. So this is just one tool that we are aware of. Other tools that are available at our disposal are the things that we're already starting. Conversations amongst the boards and looking at priorities and revenue streams, and it's a constantly changing process. This is just something that, because of popular opinion and a little bit of pushback from some people who have spoken to me quite frequently about it, that's why we're starting the conversation here. But as far as your larger question, what would we do with it or how much would we ask for? Not even really there yet, because we haven't formally even decided that as a town that that's the process that we want to follow. Oh, sorry. Ken, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, so, the Prop 2.5 process, I would break it up just in simplistic terms and into three parts. There's a discussion about priorities that's got to happen across the town, and that's what Justin and the others are talking about. The second part is sort of the mechanics of what you actually can do. Because you can sit there and say, well, we want to do X amount, and find out that you can't really do that X amount. But it doesn't really matter. There's no real sense in going to the mechanics discussion until you sense that there is within the town sort of the wherewithal and the desire to do that. As much as we, in the sort of the schools community would sit there and say, geez, we want to make it happen, there are also others within our larger Maynard community who would feel otherwise. And so you really do need to start at that general level. And, it is important to have the discussion. And so not only do you have the school committee here, but you have members from the finance committee and members of the board of selectmen here as well. And so, we're actively engaged in having that conversation. Once that discussion sort of starts, then you can start to say, well, let's take a look at the specifics of the mechanics, all right? Now, the third part is the vote, or actually votes, as Justin said.
Yeah.
There's multiple votes that have to take place. Now, I'll tell you, personally, as an individual, and I'm only speaking for Ken Estabrook here, personally for me, I think it's a healthy process to go through, because that discussion about what priorities are is a healthy discussion. Even if you don't get to the mechanics, and even if you don't get to the vote, and even if you don't have the success in the vote, having a discussion about that, which allows us to sit there and, because there are issues across the town. It is a difficult, complex process. I personally believe that the discussion is a good thing to have, even if it doesn't lead to the mechanics and it doesn't lead to a vote. And so I really embrace the idea that we're having this discussion. And it may seem like it's a little disorganized. I have to say there's a lot more organization to it than it might seem on the surface. And some of this is because the people that are having the discussion sort of understand where the different plots are, the different mechanics. And I can tell you, as somebody who came in just like everybody else here with the same knowledge, I would encourage you to come to the meetings and learn about the process and so forth, because everyone here and one of the boards started out in the same position. They're not, inherently smarter about municipal government than you are. It's just that over time we learned that. So anyway, think about it in sort of that way. It's similar to what we did with schools. We had discussion about the schools long before we started looking at the specifics of the mechanic, and long before we actually had the vote. It's like your household budget. You sit there and say, we want to go on vacation, or we want to buy a house. You have those general discussions before you start looking at the specifics and before you make the decision. So I realize that, a lot of people are saying, well, we're starting the discussions. You're like, well, where are these discussions going? The discussions are starting. They will lead probably to a more specific look at the mechanics of that. Now, whether it leads to a vote or not, don't be disappointed if it doesn't lead to a vote, because that discussion is a very important part, as we are sort of a Maynard family trying to figure out what our priorities are. So,
thank you, Ken. And Ken, I want to compliment you. You did that so much better than I did. I appreciate that so much. Can I come back to you in a minute? I'll let Bob chime in, and then I saw your hand also, so I'll come to you in just a minute.
Thank you. Ken answered some of it, and I appreciate that, but I need to take it back even more, because what does it do? It's 2.5, so is it a one-time increase, or does that then reset the number, and then from there on, we're piling on to 2.5 people? Thank you.
So I'm going to let somebody who has been through the process before chime in on it a little bit, if you don't mind, Mary.
So it does two things. For instance, we're at the high school, and the high school said, if I could just have this would bring me back, pretty much whole. So it would be us looking at the full picture of all the schools, of the administrative office, of what Jennifer is trying to do so well, and sort of getting us caught up. And then that becomes a new base. So then from then on, it's the 2.5 on that. So again, it's sort of like catch up, and then our base starts higher, so then the 2.5% over every year from there.
And Bob, you had something that you wanted to contribute.
Well, I'll let Peter, I'll defer to Peter Campbell, because I think there's two different types, Peter. I don't know if you want.
I understand the stress of school budget to run everything. I understand the discussion on the board about cuts. But just from a historical perspective, I would note the schools have always been funded at a higher rate than any other town department. And the average increase in the school budget over the last 3 or 4 years is more like 4%, not 2.5%. So just to get the actual facts out there on numbers,
No one said 2.5%.
The increase in school budget last year was somewhere around 650,000, not counting the extra money.
And you're absolutely right. And what are our two biggest budget drivers? Salaries and special education costs. And that was to maintain level service.
Salaries and employee benefits. Special education actually falls quite a bit below. It's a very major issue, but the two major drivers, by far, salaries and employee benefits.
Benefits don't come on your budget.
Sure. Did you want to go now?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
I really am not schooled on this, so I don't know. I think there are two types of override. One is like for building the high school, it's a one-time cost that adds onto your taxes. The other one that I think that we've been talking about a little bit is the fact that there have been needs that we feel as a school administration, school committee that have gone unmet, which would be ongoing, which was, I think, Linda's question. I don't know the words, whether it's debt exclusion, what type of override. I have to digest this as well. Justin and I just got it
yesterday.
Yeah, so I don't know the details, and I would defer to anybody in the audience. But what I did want to say is something that Justin said, which is that kudos to the FinCom members and the Board of Selectmen who are here tonight. Kudos to the school committee who have outreach to them last year and actually had a joint meeting. Kudos to the budget subcommittees who have already been starting to meet. And Justine, to your question, I think kudos to the FinCom because they're asking us for data on the budget earlier than ever. So once we know what our budget, once we put those numbers together for them and have those conversations, then the town as a whole are going to hear from the other departments too, and they're going to figure out, they're going to have those conversations about, is there a need for this, those important conversations, and what the town priorities are. And so I just want to thank our budget subcommittee, the Board of Selectmen, and the FinCom members who are, and the full school committee for all the work that they're putting into it earlier than ever. It's never happened in my 6 years this early. I have received a very nice email from Don Rowe, the new FinCom chairman, with sets of dates for all departments. And it's a real, the town is working hard. Your elected officials are working hard to figure this out. That's the point I wanted to make.
And I know we're spending a lot of time talking about the mechanics and the nuts and bolts of it, but there is another piece that we keep coming back to, and I know Ken addressed it really well, and that is the conversation on needs. Like, if we've somehow found ourselves at the end of this process, I would like to ask an open question, like, what are you, as the people who gave up your evening to come sit with us, thinking about if we found ourselves in a position where we could start to replace some of the things that we lost? And I'm not naive enough to think that this is a cornucopia where we're actually going to be in some sort of a crazy growth model, because as much as I would love to, I know that that's not a reality. But, what are the things that have impacted your children that you would like to see return? What are some of the things that you, as a staff member in this district, have been impacted by? And start to think about that, because that, again, is that needs conversation that sort of fuels the larger discussion. So, yeah, Nancy.
I don't live in town. I'm an employee.
You're an employee, yeah. Thank you.
Very much. Perhaps at another meeting where we have another discussion, if we put up what we've lost within the past 2, maybe 3 years, that might be able to drive the discussion in a different way. Because it will look at it perhaps not as a wish list, but what have we lost? And what do we need? And then from there, what can we add to make it better?
And I think
it's just a suggestion.
Nancy, I agree, and I think in some small way that captured what I was trying to ask. Like, if we had the opportunity to put things back, not add other things that have never really existed before, but if we had an opportunity to replace.
If we consider what we've lost, I know that the school committee the past few years has put out a detailed list of what we've lost. We can find a way to put those up during one of the discussions and then look forward that way.
That's a really nice idea, Nancy. Thank you. I saw a hand over there.
So I could add to that. I was looking at it coming here as you were asking that question. I was looking at it more, what do we value?
Oh, I like that.
More than what we lost. What do we value? Because we're looking at the future, and sure, needs are needs, but we're going to value certain needs. We're going to prioritize more than others. And this is why I asked the first question. I'm talking to other folks in town, because I'm really interested in finding how similar our values are as staff. And I think that's where we're going to find common language that will bring us forward.
Can I say something too? And in just hearing this discussion, it's just something that I want to put out there and I want people to really think about is that when we're talking about an override, although it would benefit the schools, this is an override for the entire town. And it's all departments. It's not just the schools. We are not the only department that may be feeling the pressure or not having the funds or whatever. We're starting the discussion, but it's really, I think, and in talking with the FinCom and the meetings between the Board of Selectmen, I think the real issue here is what does Maynard want to do to move forward? And not only it affects the education in Maynard, but all the other departments within Maynard. So this is a discussion to open it up so that all departments can have a voice in this and all departments can stay what they need.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Peter and then I'll come this way. Go ahead.
The idea of adding stuff back that we've lost makes some sense, and I understand the value of doing that. I guess one of the things Dr. Girardi talked about, we would like to look multiple years out.
Sure.
Because the thing about doing the override is in year one, fine, you get the extra, whatever it is, 200,000, you get to add the program you want back. The following year, you're still, frankly, increasing salaries faster than the town can sustain, and therefore you're going to have to cut that 200,000 in year two. You're going to have to cut it further in year three to fund just the necessary stuff.
So I think this gets to the point in the question of what does the town want to do, and this is a conversation as a resident, as a former member of FinCom that I know Bob McCarthy has been leading for a long time. What are our priorities and what are we spending money on and putting money towards? Because I mentioned at Finance Committee last year, it's a very simple math problem. If you want me to reduce my staff, to figure out how we can get to 2 or 3% increases every year. That being said, when we say that and we mention that we will be reducing staff and increasing class size, we have lots of other people who are coming out and saying that's not what they value, they would rather cut somewhere else. So I think it's an important conversation for us as a community to have to determine what are we putting our money towards. Do we have enough money to spend and to buy the things that we want to buy? And if we don't, what do we do about it? What services do we cut? You know, I as an educator believe in schools. As a resident, I pay taxes as well. I want my roads paved. My road currently isn't paved because it's not accepted, but that's a different story. And it won't be because it's small and it's fine. It's fine. You know, but I want all of those things as well. And I think, you know, having sat through many finance committee meetings and going to those February presentations for years, it's really a conversation about what is it that we want to do? How much does that cost? And if we don't want to pay that amount of money for those services, what are we reducing? And I think what's been happening too much is we've been having town conversations about roads and paving and so on. We've been having school conversations. We've been having fire department conversations. We need to have a Maynard conversation. And I'm hopeful that this will be the year that that happens. And Bob, I think you said the other day it was, what, 12 years or 15 years you've been asking for that. So hopefully you'll get that wish.
I get that. I think that's valuable. I guess the other piece I would add to it is I think we've been having a series of one-year conversations. Sure. And we need to move beyond that horizon and accurately predict costs in the future so that, you know, if you choose to do an override for 1 year, you know the effects and know what it's going to mean in year 3 and year 4.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Could not agree more.
Coming to you, Ken, and then I'll come back.
So I'll start, and so I'll take my FinCom hat off, and I'll take my former school committee hat off and speak as a parent. I guess, you know, for me, you know, it starts with teachers in the classroom. Okay. So with teachers in the classroom, you know, teachers are not a commodity. You know, you can't go out and buy them like chalk or pencils. Okay. So, you know, so you're looking at a teacher. There's a lot of implications there. How many teachers do you have? Therefore, what is your class size? We could cut a lot by if we were willing to sit there and change class size. So I think one of the questions we have to ask as a town is what we want our class size to be. Okay. Now, if we have kids in the school, then you're thinking I'd like class size small, If you don't have kids in the school system, you're probably thinking, yeah, you'd probably jam a few more kids in there, do well with a few less teachers, and you'd be good to go, right? Teachers, you know, when you come in, you need to hire them in, okay? Maynard may not be always the best place to come if we're not competitive in our salaries. And so, yeah, you can lower salaries, but then how competitive are you? And then it's not just hiring them in, it's also retaining them over time, okay? And our students benefit by having teachers that stay in the system over a longer period of time. I think it's a decision that you've got to make, that we have got to make as a town, as to how competitive we want our teacher salaries to be. But it's not just teacher salaries, it's also administrator salaries, okay? You have to be competitive to bring in good administrators, because those administrators support directly the teachers in the classroom, right? If there's not an administrator there to do it, do the things that need to be done, all the government regulations and all that other stuff, okay, somebody's got to pick that up, and that's generally going to get shoved off to the teachers in the classroom. So having administrators there are important, and that includes, you know, whether it's at the superintendent or assistant superintendent level or guidance counselors. You know, if you don't have good guidance counselors in place, who's going to be sitting there talking to the kid? And while the teacher is talking to the kid, then he or she is not spending as much time, able to spend as much time in the classroom. So when you cut a guidance counselor, you're not just cutting a guidance counselor, you're also cutting a pair of ears for your kids to listen to. So you've got to be sitting here looking at that. The teacher's aides, that's an important part too, particularly at the elementary school level. You know, when you sit there and you talk about kids coming in, many of whom don't have the, call it whatever you will, the socioeconomic advantages, and they come in perhaps a little bit behind, and those teachers' aides are critically important, particularly when you've got one teacher in the classroom. That teacher, they can make a big difference. And then some of those teachers' aides are also sitting there supporting the special ed kids. And so when you sit there and start talking about taking aides out of the school system, then that's what that's what you're doing, okay? Well, then there are buses. We can get rid of the buses. Let's not pay for the buses. Maynard's a small town, just have them all walk to school. Well, you know, that's not easy to do in the winter and the rain and so forth. And so you've got to think about doing that. Instructional materials, our facilities. You know, we're a small town. Unfortunately, fortunately we're a small town, but also unfortunately we're a small town because we have to sit there and pay for a lot of the things on the same scale that our neighbors. You've got Concord and Carlisle, you've got Lincoln and Sudbury, you've got Acton and Boxborough, you've got Neshoba, and they're sitting there regionalizing and we're not. Now, we built a school, we decided we didn't want to regionalize, okay, so I will say that way because there were many people in the town who really didn't want to regionalize with anybody. And so we chose to build the school, we chose to have a school system on its own. But you know, this doesn't take place just in that context. There's a lot of other stuff that happens in the town. A lot of other things that have to be funded and so forth. And we have limited funds in order to take care of DPW and all the infrastructure that we have. Okay? So, just an example here, since I'm also familiar with 129 Parker Street, having been on the planning board, okay, so when they were doing that, they sat there and found out that there were $4 million worth of improvements that had to be made in the system just around that. And we got a great DPW director who actually went through and checked out his staff, and he checked out the entire system, $4 million. Now, some portion of that is getting paid for by the developer, but some portion of that is going to have to be paid for by this town, okay? Because it's not just, you know, we have to maintain our own infrastructure. You've got police, you've got fire, you've got a lot of other things. And we as a town do not have, we have a high tax rate, but we do not have a high tax bill, okay? Well, I think sometimes when I'm paying it, it's pretty high, but when you compare it to other communities around us, and even comparable communities, we don't have as high a tax bill as many other communities have. Now, if we as a town want to do more, then we have to have a discussion about it, and you're either going to cut expenses and continue to cut expenses, or you're going to increase revenues. That's the fact. And so we as a town, I think I just laid out here the fact that you've got to look at all these different pictures just within the school system, but then also spread that out on the others. And so I think we need to look at the quality we want in our services, not only in the school, but police, DPW, our infrastructure, fire department, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and decide what we have. And that's obviously many more dimensions than just the school system. So that's where I'll say.
Justin, you asked?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just acknowledging who I'm coming to next. Continue.
You asked what people's priorities are for increasing the budget, and since I said I was in favor of an override, I'll tell you what my top 3 are. Not my only 3, but these are my top 3. Number 1 is class size K to 3. I really feel like we need to keep class sizes 20 or under. 18 is even better.
Okay.
To get the foundation of literacy established for our kids through grade 3. Personally, I have less problem going up as high as 25 in the grades above that as a secondary school teacher.
Sure.
But for K3, I think we got to keep it down. Number 2, full-time specials, all grades. The specials, that's for 2 reasons. The first reason is because a full-time position helps us attract and retain the best teachers. We don't want somebody who wants to work full-time and is going to look for a new job every single year. We do not want that. We want people who are committed to Maynard, and the way to do that is to have a full-time position. The second reason for full-time specials is because the kids need a special every day. It's something they really look forward to. It really adds variety and interest to their day. And I loved it at Green Meadow when they had a second iteration of a certain special on Fridays. So the second graders had art twice that week, for instance. I thought that was a great way to do it, and I wish we could go back. My third priority is paraprofessionals. As an educator, I am absolutely committed to including special ed kids in regular classrooms. But what I see is that there's a number of needy kids who need more attention in the classroom. And I know we've lost some paraprofessionals. I think we need them. I feel like we need more paraprofessionals.
Thank you. Coming this way. Yeah.
I'm stepping off of the priority conversation just for a second because I want to understand something regarding.
I'm sorry, speak up, please.
Just regarding this discussion in general. I'm stepping away from the priority list for a second. If we're discussing this and you guys are having joint meetings in October, November, December, where is the projection of this conversation going for the budget for next year? Is an override, if let's say it passes, is there a time frame in which the town can vote and everything can happen to affect our budget next year? Or are we looking for this conversation to be like 2 years out from?
That's a really good question. I don't have an answer to. Is this?
Next year.
Yeah.
It would what?
I said ideally if we could have the conversation in that, it would be for next year, for fiscal year 2018-19. Personally, I'm just speaking for myself. I don't know if we can do it fast enough, but that's why we started having these conversations now versus in January or February.
I just didn't know if it was feasibly possible to go through this entire process and sweep the whole town, have these town meetings and discussions and forums, have a special election and the whole business of it all. And then, meanwhile, you guys are probably going to be making projected cuts because we have to foresee them anyway. And then, I didn't know where that put us, whether this would go through or not, what year we're talking.
So, I have to say, I agree with everything you just said. I think in a perfect world, if we decided as a community, we might be able to pull it off in 1 year. However, I just know from doing a very quick Google search that other towns have talked about it and worked on process and procedure and all of that, and it has been a multi-year process.
The most important thing is to really educate people. You know, for us to come up with a plan with all the boards, a cohesive plan, and then it really is to educate people, and that's doing the coffees, that's doing the forums, that, you know, just really educating people so at least they can make an educated decision. You know, we lay out all the facts, and then it really, and Terrence put it the best the other night at the selectmen's meeting, it really is the voters that decide, you know, so hopefully we get the buy-in, all three committees, and then we take it to the people, and they make the decision, and then we have to, you know, do whatever they say.
Okay. Yeah, I had a quick fear in my go through my head when we just started this discussion that I really cannot imagine this being another 129 Parker fiasco of like the first rollout of it being a miseducation of constituents and then going back to the drawing board and reevaluating and then passing it so many years later. And if that could be our priority, to really use this community forum and educate everyone and whatever it takes to go door to door with the right information, then it's up to the residents to make the decision from there.
Sarah, that is part of why this is a conceptual conversation, because to try, that it's very sobering to think about what it would require if this were actually one of the tools that was going to, and why we're having just an initial exploratory discussion about it now, because it's just one of the tools and one of the possibilities, and we may just end up realizing this is not the direction to go in. But I do think that, as Ken said, the conversation about priorities as a town, and so these conversations aren't happening separate. What are the priorities in the town, and what are the priorities in the school, and just you have to cut in. And albeit the school is the biggest driver of expenses, nonetheless, having those together, I think will make a big, will really help us as a town as we're trying to look at all these things that and the needs and what we need to try to do and make some decisions. Did you want to say something, Chris?
Yeah, Chris.
So there's a few different things that are in play in the larger discussion. One of them is the tax rate, and the tax hearing is within the next month. We have our first tax rate hearing for fiscal 2019. So, you know, this whole discussion is it's not today. We still have a huge problem for the next year's budget, which is something that, you know, we talked about a few different times. They've mentioned that there's the FinCom, us as a selectmen, and the school committee are going to meet with town officials to start this larger process. But there's also smaller meetings going on between different groups within those groups. David Gavin and Cheryl Steele will start working with the school's smaller budget committee to get those things done. But this 2.5 override thing, whether you agree with it or not, or whether it's the right thing to do or not, who knows? It's going to be a lot of discussion, but it's at least a full fiscal year out, because you've got to get all this conversation, much of the things that Ken's been talking about, and you have to convince a lot of people that don't have kids in school and continue to show us that they really don't care about the schools based on their votes at town meeting and their opinions and, you know, different op-ed pieces in the Beacon and different places. So you got to convince a lot of people that it's what we want to do. And then we have to vote on it as selectmen to put it on a ballot. And one of the problems when you vote, and you'll see it when you read the thing that Justin's talking about, is when you have that first vote, that vote has to include the dollar amount. So you have to have the dollar amount really early in the process, and you can't change. Because what we vote on, if we decide to vote and when we decide to vote, is exactly what has to go before the voters. That's the question that has to be on the ballot. So, you know, there's a lot of work to do, and all of us are digging in to do the work, but it's a long way off. So we still have a problem for 2018, 2019, which we're obviously happy we're here. So we're all here together to try and figure this out together. But the 2.5 is a long process, and it's you know, it's got to be approved by the state like everything else, revenue based. You know, it's a huge process, and it's probably, as if we started right now, even if we knew what we wanted to do today and had the amount, we still wouldn't get it into next year. It would be a year out. So it's something that, you know, has to take place fast. But with the, you know, tax hearings being set, we're going to set the tax rates within the next month. For the first time in about, I don't know, since I've been on the board, and I think David would say the same thing, and he's been there a little bit longer than the rest of us. We're going to meet with our water and sewer representatives. We have a new company that's going to advise us this year. So we're going to meet with them now rather than in April or May and push it through at the end. So we're starting all these things earlier with all this in mind. But, you know, whatever we can do to kind of be a part of the process, we're happy to do. But it is, I just want to caution everybody that it's a long, long process. So just so that everyone knows that it's a long process, and you know, the more information we have, the better. But we have to have it. We can't do it like we do some things in Maynard. We have to do it right, and we have to do it now, so that when we get on that stage, and we don't have to go to town meeting with it, but we have to vote on it. But when you set the question, and the state gives you the language for the question, it has to be what we want it to be. So
thank you, Chris.
That's it.
Really appreciate that.
So I just need to add in, I think Chris is absolutely right. I just would reiterate my point. The discussion is the most important thing for us to be engaging in. There are people who will be able to look at the specifics, the mechanics, and that really is something that, you know, first off, the Board of Selectmen, the FinCom, the school committee, and many others will be involved in that. And ultimately, it's got to come to a town meeting vote and then a ballot vote. So it's not like anything's going to get snuck in there. It's not like you're not going to have an opportunity to see what the final product is. Chris is absolutely right about that. Okay, I just say, my point is, don't get overwhelmed. It's easy for us to get overwhelmed by the details around the mechanics, when really the most important part is the discussion of priorities and understanding that. Now, you know, one person said, well, you know, you were saying that paraprofessionals are very important, and they are important in the school system. Okay, but now are we willing to sit there and, you know, increase our taxes in order to fund that? And if we are willing, or enough of our fellow citizens also willing to do that and carry out their moral obligation to provide an education for the children of our town, even if they don't have any kids in the school system, then that's what we have to work on. That's what Mary, you know, going back to the school, you know, the mechanics were very complex. The vote, you know, took a lot of time, but it was really a lot of the discussions around what do we want out of a school, how big, what do we, you know, are we ready to do it now? And it certainly didn't happen year one or year two. So.
I will say that, and I've been involved in 2 successful overrides, ancient history, but it was, and I think we were talking about this earlier, that Maynard is really, really special in a lot of ways, but one of the ways is the multi-generational support that we get. We cannot assume that seniors are not going to vote for this, or just because you don't have kids in the school system, you're not going to vote for it. We found that if we educated them, you know, not only is it, you know, we've got grandparents here that have their kids, you know, the grandkids that are in school and that, and they want to support them. And also, real estate values, let's face it, and I've said this forever, the selectmen won't like this comment, but in my opinion, the superintendent of schools is in every community the most important person, because the schools, as the schools go, property values go, and the confidence level in that in the town. So, you know, those people, it was funny because one of the overrides, I'll never forget it, I had people who would say, well, I don't care what the property value is. I don't care if my property value goes down. I'm just going to hand it down to my kids anyway. And it's like you had no, you know, no argument for that. But it really, it just has such an overwhelming value that we just, you know, we reach out to every single constituent, and I feel that people really do value the education. So.
I just had one more priority. I agree with, especially the first 2 that you mentioned with the specials and the lower class size, but when I hear the figure of how much money we're spending for kids to go to charter schools, I'd like to know why so many kids are going and where we need to prioritize so that number's never going to be eliminated, but it doesn't need to be as high as it is. So what can we do as a district? Where do we need to put our money and whatever else it is, our efforts,
so that we're not spending $600,000 to send kids.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because the first question that Mary Brantley asked when she rejoined our committee this year was, do we do exit interviews with the families whose children elect to go to charter schools? And Dr. Girardi recently worked up some material that we're in the process of digging through and looking at as a board, and I think that ultimately we will share some of the larger themes with those of you who come to our meetings on a regular basis as a future agenda item, because I think...
Mind me asking how many interviews you actually conducted this year? But how many interviews?
So how many interviews do you think you've done, Dr. Girardi?
Over the years, it's probably been about a dozen, because I ask for interviews and only usually 2 or 3 a year come to me.
We also, just in terms of that, because this is an important piece, and we do ask the questions of why are folks going out, and as you indicate, it's never going to be zero, because with ASABIT, there's certain things that certain kids need that we're not going to be able to provide, and families need to make choices that are best for their students. But this is not, we are asking those questions as much as it could be a funding piece. We're also asking it as a programming piece. What are the things that either are special about Maynard that we need to emphasize and support and promote, and then also what are some of the things that we need to do and change and fix within our programming so that folks feel that we are able to provide them the education that they want for their child. So those are ongoing conversations and initiatives that are coming out and we're working on with teachers as well. So it's not, I don't want you to walk away thinking that we're just waiting to until this piece happens.
But I just think that, I hadn't heard that number before, so I think, gosh, if we'd spent $300,000 on programming, we would have saved ourselves. I know it doesn't work that way, but that's
So, and a lot of it is really goes into some of the initiatives that we have in terms of the writing programming that we're doing this year was a piece that we've had. We've heard about concerns about math and the rigor with which math is presented, which as someone who came in as a high school teacher, humanities teacher, going in and learning about elementary education and what we're asking our elementary teachers to do over the last 7 years, we do need to do some work there, but we've also sort of really changed the game on them real quickly. So we're working on that piece of it. And then the other component that we hear is really around the social emotional learning. So we are tackling all 3 of those within this year. But yes, some of it is programming. And Dr. Girardi is really great about sometimes giving me gray hairs about some of the programming that he asked us to put in. Latin was an initiative that came about because of folks and the concerns that people have had. The computer science pieces. We'll be giving a presentation to school committee that influences this conversation around computer science as a pathway and what that will mean in terms of staffing and how we do it. Can we do it within our current staffing? Sure, but the same conversation with the elementary class sizes or teacher class sizes. If we do it within our current programming, something else is going away. So what would that be? So we are responding to those needs in that sort of way as well.
I'm thinking of it more like a wish list or priority list or whatever.
But I'm really glad that Jen shared that real world example with you. We added computer science and Latin at the Fowler School because of feedback we got from families that chose to leave. So, we're trying to follow the trends, we're trying to be responsive while at the same time being innovative. And trying to lead even in some ways. So there's always things that we could do better. And when Mary brought up we would like to hear from more people who, choose to leave our district, that informs our decision making. Conversations like the ones that are happening tonight inform our decision making. Those of you who have been through the budget cycle with me before know that I sit and every person who speaks as a priority, I write it down and I keep tallies. So, my poor agenda tonight I've written all over, but we do try as hard as we possibly can to take the feedback that we get from people who come to the meetings and really incorporate it into our work and the way that we project forward. So.
And also, I just learned that that Massachusetts is creating a framework for computer science. So again, if you're standing still in education, you're actually falling behind. So not only do we have to keep doing what we have been doing for students, but we keep getting pushed by the state, as great as that state is. So we have to create that framework, speaking to Jennifer's initiative.
And if I could add to that, just because I like talking about programming, because that's my job. But so I'm involved with I get the name wrong all the time, but essentially it's a regional workforce development board. What the state is doing is they're asking all of the agencies to figure out sort of what are the jobs of the future, what are the current jobs, where are the skill gaps. So figured it would be a good idea for me to sort of know what they're talking about so we can get grant funding and so on in that area. So we are involved heavily in that piece of it, looking at computer science, health pathways, those types of things, and how we can change our programming to support our students. But I do have to say that one of the things that drew me to working in Maynard is some of the programming that they were far ahead of their time with. Something that is really important in college and career readiness is that students are able to identify a personal passion or interest, that they are able to execute a project based on that passion or interest. And the senior project, which we talk about, is something that a lot of districts attempt to put in place and often fail, or it winds up being sort of a bad PowerPoint presentation that the kids give. And the work that our teachers and our students put in to this senior project pathway, starting as freshmen, where they're given an idea of what they can be doing, you cannot discount the thinking that went into that. You cannot discount the personalization that happens with the advisory program model that changed at the high school last year, where they saw the data that said kids weren't connecting, and the teachers said, we need to change this. So we're going to figure out ways that we can find for these kids to connect with us as staff members, and made those changes, which is another piece that we're finding in education that's super important. So there's a lot of things that Maynard does really, really well, and I don't want that to sort of go astray here. We've got some really incredible staff members who work really hard for these kids, but more importantly than working hard, they get really great results out of some of the pieces that they put forward. So
I think that's the other point, is being able to really play up some of that more, Renee, to be able to try to proactively really look at what are our strengths and how do we make sure that people are aware of that, so that they can make really informed decisions about what they're going to do for their family and what their needs are for their family, and then make that decision, because it's a very personal choice. But I think that's what the Fowlers showcased. The people that managed to pull that off was really starting to try to create so that people can understand when that decision point happens in 6th grade for where people are going to be going for potentially charter schools, being able to have realize the options that Fowler offers and the strengths there too. And I forgot the band. We have an amazing music program. Sorry, I forgot them. I'm so sorry. That goes without saying, Jen.
I just wanted to add to that, we see families leaving with the charter schools. We also see families who choose school choice bringing money in, also leaving. And families leaving charter schools because they feel that their needs here are not being met. I can specifically talk about special education. We have an awesome program for kids on the autism spectrum. It's everyone knows, right? But not all kids are being equally supported, and because of that, a lot of families are leaving with that and taking the money with them. I truly believe that there are innovative ways that we can identify kids early, implement integration early within the general classroom, so we're saving money in the long run. Right now, I do think we're spending a lot of money in special education later on, when that money is going to be very helpful early on.
Thank you. All right. Well, in that case, thank you for a really excellent conversation. I'm aware of the fact that it's getting late. Thank you, everyone who contributed and stayed with us this evening. At this point, I'm going to move on in the agenda, and I'm going to go to item number 7, members' comments and questions. Anybody? Yeah, Mary.
Sorry. So one of the things that we had talked about was having a school committee member be at each one of the Board of Selectmen meeting. I mean, ideally 2 people, but if we could have like a revolving schedule so that, just to have representation, that would be, I'd like that.
I agree with you, and I think we'll take that conversation offline and just look at schedules and availabilities. And I'm envisioning maybe not a survey so much as like, when are you available, and maybe we can just plug and play.
Or maybe Colleen can do a doodle.
Yeah,
that's always a good way.
Except I can never figure out. I always submit it before I answer all of the questions.
Technology. It's great and it's tough sometimes.
Yeah. Anyway.
And one of the other things that, as Mary and I have been going from school to school, there was a conversation that came up in Fowler yesterday, the day before. I'm kind of losing track of how many meetings we've had.
And you're close to turning into a pumpkin.
I know, really. That I thought was a really good thought. One of the struggles that the schools are having is with scheduling, the specials and that, and common planning time for the teachers and that kind of thing. So one of the thoughts that had come up is that, sort of informally, but to get a group of people together to figure out scheduling between the schools for next year, given the constraints that we have, and that maybe better utilizing people from school to school. That was always one of the great assets of having a campus, was that we were going to really try and take advantage of that. So I don't know if we can get teachers and maybe principals together to have a few meetings to try and figure out maybe scheduling better for next year, because there are definitely challenges this year.
Yeah, I can talk to that in particular. And over the last 3 years that I've been here, and we have been working, and we did see reductions. We are sharing staff between the high school and Fowler, which presents some of its own unique challenges. In that way, because of the different times. So it is one of the pieces that we sort of are constantly looking at. My message to principals has been, we need to accelerate our scheduling process so that we're not waiting until the end, and that is something that we will be doing. So we will. I know that each building has undertaken scheduling committees in different times for different reasons for that piece, and certainly we can do, we could do an inter-building scheduling committee in that capacity as well.
Yeah, one of the thoughts is that to maybe have the same scheduling days, like, the Fowler has 4-day schedule now. One of the people that we met with said that there's a prototype out there of having day 1 and day 2, for instance. We're talking about block scheduling, which, a bunch of different things, but just to kind of look at it. And it really isn't, each school in and of itself, but it's really the whole, especially maybe the elementary and the middle, but just to just take a look at the whole thing and just to see if we could better utilize our staff.
Yes, we can. And I will say that, as with the Prop 2.5 discussion, these are things that take time, especially with major scheduling changes with blocks and different pieces. So we absolutely, that is not something in terms of sort of a complete revamp of the schedule that was on my radar. So we will add that and start having some of those conversations. But I just want to, that does take a lot of time to have the conversation. And then also, especially if we're changing the nature of the school day in terms of the blocks of time for teachers doing professional development, so that they're prepared with that piece. So we will add that to the radar. Thank you.
I just, there's a lot of heavy conversation tonight, but I wanted to say that the first couple of weeks of school, my kids have been thrilled at Green Meadow, and, asking them how school is, and they come home saying awesome and so fun. And so shout out to all the Green Meadow teachers that I see out there. Thank you, because my kids love you guys.
Awesome. Anything from you, Bethlehem?
Yeah, I guess I kind of piggybacking off of that, the more that I've been, there's always more to get up to speed on, but as I'm learning more and more and being involved in the town in ways I never thought I would, I just would say that I just feel very honored to be part of the Maynard community and the family, and that it's like a family where people aren't always going to see eye to eye, but that we always come back to the conversation. And I just appreciate everyone's mindfulness, commitment, and not only but the people that work here too, not just the people that live here, and including our teachers, our administrators. I just feel like everyone really is really staying in these conversations and trying to do the best that we can. And it may look different to different people, but we're all trying to do that together. And it's not always fun. But I just want to give kudos to everyone for that, because I really think that that's something we should be able to celebrate together.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, we're having so much fun.
You can't entertain the motion to adjourn.
What's up? We spend a lot of time together, so I'm going to laugh when I say this, but thank you for that qualifier.
I just want to thank, Aaron had left, but the courtyard at Green Meadows looks phenomenal.
Awesome.
It's all cleaned up, the kids are out there using it, they're reading out there, doing signs out there, so we thank you very much. Follow through with it.
Thanks, Ann.
Looks good. Go back.
And that was a conversation at the last school committee meeting, so it's between then and now. That's a good point.
It's great responsiveness.
Things happen.
Awesome.
Now he's talking about spending that money. I'll entertain a motion.
So make a motion then, Larry.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion has been made. Any second? Just, all right, all in favor? All 4-0. Let's do this. Thank you.